A few minutes ago, the puppets reminded us that when something feels unfair or when something feels limited in our lives, the most sacred question that we can ask is, does it have to be this way? That question is the doorway into today's theme, which is reimagine. Reimagining is not wishful thinking. It is at the heart of our faith. It is at the heart of the biblical text. It's what the prophets do. It's what Jesus does. It's what the Spirit does. Working newness into old places until hope births and arrives. Now, 2 weeks ago, we practiced a bit of reimagining together. If you remember, instead of collecting an offering, although we did that too, we handed out one. Every person in the sanctuary that day received $10. It was a small manna moment placed into your hands. And we asked you to imagine how that gift might be used in kingdom-shaped ways. Now, some of you took that bill home with a sense of possibility. Some tucked it away in your wallet and waited. Some felt a little nervous. What do I do with this? And instantly dropped it in a box at the back of the sanctuary. Some of you have already acted on some of that imagination, and some of you are still listening to the Spirit's nudge even. Today is the week all of that comes together, because this is the week of reimagining. The week that we dare to believe that God is not finished forming our money stories, our community, and our imagination. There's two scriptures that we're going to be looking at today. The first one is in Mark chapter 12. Jesus sits opposite the treasury watching people give. The wealthy drop in large sums of money. They are loud. They are impressive gifts. And then small little old widow entered, placing in the offering 2 small coins. Jesus doesn't just see the amount. He sees, as he always does, the story behind it. He sees, I think, a world system where some live in abundance so deep that they can give out of their overflow, and others give from their poverty because there's no earthly system that has ever ensured their provision, and their only hope can be that God might do something. Now, what we often miss in this passage is what comes right before the story. Right before this story, right before this moment that we see the widow give her last 2 small coins, Jesus warns about leaders who devour widows' houses. He names the brokenness behind the widow's offering. Jesus is not romanticizing or spiritualizing the widow's desperation. He is critiquing a system that left her with nothing but 2 coins to begin with. This scene is not only about generosity, it is about imagination. It is Jesus saying, you need to look hard at this. This is not how God intended the world to work. We need to reimagine a different story. Walter Brueggemann wrote in a book called Prophetic Imagination. He outlines how the prophetic task is to imagine the world as though God was truly sovereign in it. That kind of imagination is what Jesus is calling forth in this story with his disciples. Before the temple, before the treasury, before Roman taxation, before the church, God commanded Israel that every 50 years they were to release debts, free captives, return land, rebalance inequality, and allow the soil itself to rest. It was called Jubilee. And Jubilee was God saying, you will not recreate Pharaoh's economy. Remember the liberation from Egypt that you had. You will not build a world where the vulnerable are forgotten. You will build a world of enough for everyone. In Leviticus, God tells farmers to leave the edges of their field for the poor and the immigrant. Gleanings deliberately left behind so that others may live and harvest with dignity for their needs. The metaphorical edges of our life fields should not be accidental either. We should be leaving margins in our lives for the desperate that are around us. They should become intentional spaces of compassion and shared dignity for our fellow humanity. And it's not charity. It's system level reimagination of human equity. Wendell Berry, who was a poet, called the grace of the world. That's what he called it, the grace of the world, the grace that emerges when we trust God's abundance in the world. Every one of us has inherited a money story. That's the series that we're kind of going through right now. And there's a journal back there that you can use to investigate your money story and investigate God's money story and investigate our community money story and reimagine what it might be. And the truth of it is some of us have inherited scarcity in our life. Some have inherited shame in our life. Some have inherited anxiety. And some inherited the belief that worth and wealth are the same thing. But here is where we find freedom. Stories can be rewritten. Reimagining asks, what if God's dream for me is bigger than the story that I have carried in my life thus far? What if my money is not only about survival, but about connection, about compassion, about justice in the world? What if the Spirit is inviting me to participate in Jubilee, even in small ways? As I mentioned earlier, 2 weeks ago, when we placed that $10 bill in your hands, it wasn't about the amount. It was about imagination. It was about trusting that a little can become much when held in God's story. It was about asking, what can this become in the hands of a disciple of Jesus Christ? Now, some used their $10 bill to feed somebody. Some bought supplies to bless a neighbor. Some reached out to someone who needed dignity, not charity. And some used it to start something bigger than a $10 bill ever could do on its own. And some of you, maybe you're still imagining, still listening, still discerning what the Spirit has to say to you as a disciple. That is holy. That is Jubilee. That is the Spirit at work. This next part of the sermon is inviting your participation, all right? Because Imagine grows among us as a community of believers when our imagination and our stories are shared. So, I want to ask you, If you have imagined a way to use your $10 bill, if you have already acted on it or have an imagination about what you might do it, would you be willing to stand and briefly tell us what you did or plan to do? Just one or two sentences. It doesn't have to be an elaborate thing. No pressure, just simply naming what the Spirit has stirred in you with that $10 bill. Anybody willing to risk sharing their imagination? Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. We're going to need more than one mic. All right. I'm going to come on out. Can I bring a mic to you? Okay. Well, all right. Thank you. Little class participation here.
All right, well, that was $10, and the poinsettias are exactly $10, so that worked out really well.
Yes, wonderful.
Who's next?
Hadn't planned on that one, but that's a great idea. Millard has his hand up.
You may recall that about the time that the $10 bill hit plate, the Mega Millions had hit, I don't know what, 800 million?
It was actually 898 million.
I actually had the thought, maybe I should
Yeah,
go
2
buy
tickets.
one of those tickets.
Turn it in. Yeah.
Think how I could multiply that, right?
Exactly. So
But I didn't do that.
Oh, okay.
I did take a brother out to lunch, and we had about an hour conversation about what God was about in the world, and it was a real joy to do that. It was a blessing to me. I hope to the person I took out as well.
Absolutely. Wonderful. So you built intimacy, you built community, you built relationship, and you deepened your spiritual journey with one another. Brenda back there?
Well, I thought I'd lost it. I thought I put it in my folder. I thought I put it in my purse, could not find it. But the morning of the breakfast that the youth were having for a fundraiser, surprised it was in my wallet the whole time, hidden away in a safe place. And so that's where the $10 went for the breakfast.
All right, wonderful. Giving to our youth to go to NYC and have a wonderful, incredible spiritual transformational experience.
I will. Anyways, I'm a teacher at Rocktown High School. Excuse me, I'm swollen. And my kids ask me how we celebrate Thanksgiving, because they don't celebrate it the same way. So I'm using my $10 to buy them turkey.
Marvelous. Building community. Thank you. Anybody else?
So I am, and for a number of years have been part of a book club, and we were meeting later in the afternoon, and it's a bunch of women that I don't really need to minister to, but one of the women had purchased all this food for us that was kind of theme related to the book, and she kept carrying stuff in, and I went up to her and I was like, can I give you anything? And I mean, we met in Stewart's Draft at 1:00, so that, I hadn't had that $10 long. And she said, well, if you want to give me $10, that would be great. And it just felt so specific. It was like, there it is in my pocket. There it is gone. But it was an opportunity to share with the whole group how that money had came, and an opportunity to share some of the excitement about what we've got going on here. So wanted to share that.
Wonderful. Relieving someone's burden. Yeah. Jubilee is all about.
I wasn't here that Sunday, but I listened to your sermon anyway. And so I took $10 and gave it to someone that I knew had needed it.
Oh, wow. Okay. So sparked your imagination and your generosity just hearing about it. Huh. Very cool. David?
And I was sitting there thinking, well, these waitresses always work really hard, waiters and waitresses, and probably don't get paid much. So I gave mine as a tip to the waitress. Right.
Very nice. Recognizing service of others with gift. Anybody else have a heart to to share. Well, I know there's more stories, so, if you don't want to share them in public, I encourage you to share them with one another to spark imagination, because that is what reimagining looks like. They're not grand gestures, right? They were all just small, deliberate acts of kingdom imagination, taking kingdom opportunities in our life and the flow of it. Acts that say, this is not just money. This is manna. This is seed that we are planting. This is jubilee in the making. I'll leave you with three things that we can continue to try to work at. First, reimagining what enough means. Not as a quantity, but as a level of trust that we have in God, and I would say in the community of believers that surrounds us. We've heard a lot this morning about the support that a community of believers can provide. Enough in Scripture is always tied to God, not to accumulation. Second, reimagining the edges of our field, whether literally or figuratively. Where can we create margin in our lives? Where can we intentionally leave space or edges for another person's flourishing around our life? And third, reimagining community. What would Pleasant Valley Church of the Brethren look like if Jubilee wasn't a metaphor, but a lived reality? If no one in this room had to suffer alone. I think a lot of that's going on, actually. If we believe that God's abundance can flow in unexpected ways, even through $10 bills. So I leave you with this morning, to those that are living in scarcity, God sees you. Your story is not defined by lack. Reimagine. To those living in abundance, your abundance is an invitation to be part of God's imagination. Reimagine. To those who feel unsure, the Spirit works not through certainty, but through openness. Imagine. And to our whole church, reimagining is not naive. It is resurrection in action. It is what disciples do when they believe God is still working in our story. Amen.